Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and in today's video, we're doing an amp and sub in this 2011 Audi A3. Now in this install, we're going to show you to install this amp and sub, run all the cabling, and integrate this with the factory audio sound system. Let's get started. Now a couple things to note, we don't have the high-end audio in this, we don't have navigation. In most instances, Audi, this trim level, the base trim level, is equipped with the concert audio sound system. What it still means, it still has an amplifier. So whether you have the higher end or the lower end, regardless, you're going to be tapping into the factory amp for your signal. So we'll get that here in a moment, but first let's head over to the bench to show you the parts that we're going to need for our install. Now here at the bench, some of the parts that we're going to need for the install, first and foremost, is the amplifier. The amplifier that we're installing today is an older school Pioneer, and it's already mounted in the vehicle, which we'll show you what that looks like here in a moment. But this is an example of a great monoblock budget amplifier, and we can link one of these down in the description. Now you'll need some sort of wiring kit, and the wiring kit size will be based upon the size of the amplifier installed. Today we're going to be doing a 4-gauge with our Pioneer amp. Amplifier wiring kits come with power, ground, RCAs, remote turn-on wire, some speaker wire, fuse and fuse holder, and some accessories as well. Everything that you'll need for your install. Now because we have a factory radio, we don't have an aftermarket radio that has RCA pre-outs, we'll need some sort of way to tap into the factory audio sound system for our signal so our amplifier knows what to play. So a line-out converter is kind of the route that we'll go. There's higher end, there's lower ends. This one's kind of right in the middle. This is the Pack Audio LP7-2. What's also cool about this guy, it also provides an amplifier turn-on circuit, or essentially a remote turn-on wire. So as soon as it detects audio from the factory sound system, not only does it provide an RCA signal output for our amp, but it's also going to provide a remote turn-on wire. So it'll signal the amplifier, our new amplifier, to turn on as soon as the factory audio sound system does itself. So without further ado, let's head over to the vehicle. What we need to do is start planning our wire run from the battery up underneath the hood. We'll grab our power wire. We need to find access through the firewall to run this power wire. And our amplifier currently is mounted on the back of the seat in the hatch. Alright, so up underneath the hood, our battery is on the driver's side here. Now generally there's a cover over the top. We've already pulled off the cover here. And the positive post is here on the left side. Alright, so what we've done here is we have found access. Now we didn't stick it from the engine bay, we actually went inside to feed our little wire fish through here, and we're going to show you how we did that. So let's go underside, show you the access we found to pull that wire through. Now we went ahead and dropped the panel down. There's only 3 screws actually holding it in, and they're all 8mm for the most part. There's one on this end, one right here, and then there's one up here. Now this panel will need to come off first. It just held on with clips. It's your fuse cover panel. So once that's out of the way, move those 3 screws, and literally this lays down. We disconnected our harness here, and what that's going to do is now give us great access to run our power wire through. Now our little hanger fish, our notorious hanger fish, that is up this way, and if we pull this on back, there is right there the grommet that we passed our wire through. There's a couple of layers of thin rubber sealing that up, and we want to actually utilize those as much as possible. So what we've done is grabbed our wire hanger, pierced and poked through those rubber gaskets, and that's when it poked out the other side up by the battery box. And what we've done here is we went ahead and taped our power wire to that with some electrical tape and using that hanger as a fish. It'll be in our best interest to go ahead and lubricate this wire with a lot of soap and water, so as it passes through the factory grommet there, it's not going to get hung up. Then what we'll do is go to the top side and pull from the engine bay our wire through the firewall up by the battery box. Alright, so we started prepping our wire. Now we split loomed it since we pulled it through the firewall, and we did a little L bracket for our fuse holder, and it just mounts into the battery shroud here, so it can be removed. It's out of the way of the air filter. It's kind of a nice little spot, and our cover for our battery still clips shut. So it's a nice, easy location. What we'll do is go through here. Now we put a small hole right through the shroud, and we're going to go up to that nut. Here's the way that we've done our wiring. We do this with all our installs. The wire ferrules on the end and heat shrink. We're going to get all sealed up here, and we'll throw a piece of split loom on there as well once we run it through that battery shroud. So we'll get that in there, and then to the positive post. We won't hook it up quite yet until the amplifier is all wired, but at least it'll be there and ready to go when we are. You'll notice you won't be able to get the nut off all the way. It's little crimps on the end of that. Manufacturer does that so you don't lose the nut, but it's annoying to add any additional accessories. So we're going to file down those bumps so the nut comes off nice and easy, so we can prepare to get our power wire installed. Now what we've done here is pop this panel all the way off. These clips are super frustrating because they always stay in. So with a pick tool and some needle nose, we popped them all back out so we can put them back in the panel as soon as we're ready to reassemble. But essentially we've run our wire. This just unsnaps from the B pillar. Continue to run that down. Pull the seat up, it just pops. Ran it up underneath the seat and we came out there. Now we did our spade terminals right there. We got our power all connected. So we can actually reassemble this. We don't need to necessarily go to our fuse box for switch power because our line out converter is going to generate one for us. So really that's it. We're going to go ahead and snap this all back into place, and we're going to show you how we've done our ground and how we've grounded that back here by the wheel well. All right, so we went ahead and prepared our ground here. Now, there's a couple of places. Obviously, we can go to these studs, but they are raised. So you'd have to clean up the paint really well and put washers so you get enough tightness. You could also go on top of the bracket, but then you'd have to clean up the bracket of any paint because it's well painted, and that would cause a lot of resistance there, and your amp won't perform properly. So what we did is we spent some time with a wire brush there and cleaned up that surface super well. It's bare metal. Put a 10mm bolt and a lock washer, and that's in there nice and tight. So we're going to use that location. It's nice and solid. And that goes up to the ground input of our amplifier. All right, so with our power and ground all done, next thing we need to talk about is getting signal and a remote turn on wire to our amplifier. A line-out converter, which we first introduced at the beginning of the video, and we also have this exact same one though with a compatible bass knob that comes with it. We're actually using this today, but basically besides the bass knob, they're identical. Now in this kit comes with the line-out converter itself. RCAs go to the amplifier. Has a harness that goes on the other side. You can actually take apart the bass knob that's included in this version and flush mount it if needed, and you have some instructions as well as a tuning key. So this harness is nice and long. There's actually only a couple of connections here. You're just going to go ahead and cut those ends off, but they're nice ones to keep, so throw them in a bin or something like that. We don't need these today. These are our high-level inputs, and essentially here, these will need to tap into the factory subwoofer. The subwoofer itself is a dual voice coil, so we're going to snag left and right, both coils, for our high-level input connection. So this is the input. It's going to feed our line-out converter the signal it needs to convert. Now these other wires here, this black one is your bass knob connection. You may not have this if you don't have the bass knob version, like the other one we talked about, but that's where the bass knob connects. We'll have a constant 12 volt, which is yellow, and a ground, which is black. We'll need to find constant 12 volt and ground, which will most likely snag at the factory amplifier. Now this guy is your output. This is your remote turn on wire that our line out converter generates to turn the aftermarket amplifier on when it senses audio over the factory system. So this one is an output, and this will go along with the RCA output to the amplifier. So this is input. This is our bass knob connection. This is power and ground to run everything. And then this is output along with the RCAs to the amp. So T20. All right, so with this all pulled apart, what we've done here is we actually drilled a hole and threw a grommet in so we can seal up and around our wiring. And we extended our speaker wire inputs from the harness from a line out converter, ran it inside, and it's really easy to determine what's positive and what's negative. Negative, positive, negative, positive, or your black is your negative, your green is your positive. What we did is we stripped the wire back and we just soldered on there. You could use T-taps or something like that. We wanted a good solid connection within this sealed box. Same thing with the other side. And then we ran that out to the harness. So that takes care of our speaker wire input. We're gonna insulate this with electrical tape and relume the harness as factory. Power side, constant 12 volt. This is our power wire for the amplifier. It's a red with a blue stripe. And we, again, stripped it back just ever so slightly so we could solder into the copper there. And our brown is our ground. So those are done. And then the last one, our output, remote output, we extended that wire and that's gonna go all the way to our amplifier. So we soldered on there. Now we're just gonna add our heat shrink and clean up our wiring. All right, so we went ahead and got our sub back in after we relumed everything. This is where our line out converter connects. Now it does look like it's actually ported there. So you could run wires just right out the port, but we did that there. It looks a little bit more professional. We loomed everything up. Got our RCAs connected. You saw all the other connections, loomed everything, zip tied, got it all tucked in there. It's a nice little soft spot. It's not gonna rattle around, it's nice and secured. And then they go up to our amplifier there. So really we're done back behind here besides testing. We wanna make sure everything's working before we button up this panel. But once it is, then we can get this panel all reassembled here. And we need speaker wire outputs that'll just go to our subs and set our gains to the factory radio. Now, up underneath the hood here, since our power and ground of our amplifier is all completed and we've hooked up our line out converter and that's all running properly, we're done underneath the hood. What we've done is remove the negative off the battery, and then that allowed us to work on our positive side of our power wire. Now, we unfortunately were not lucky enough, even if we file down the side, for that nut and bolt not to shear. It sheared off, so we replaced it with almost an identical nut and bolt with the 10mm nut as well. We put a lock washer and washer on there and got everything connected. Unfortunately, we couldn't save the factory one. It's just not doable based on the amperage we're pulling, and we don't want to go to the power distribution. We want to go right to the battery. So that was the only way that we can make this happen here today. So we have a new nut and bolt there on the positive terminal. And again, we only did that when the negative was off, and we made all the other connections and those were totally done. So at this point of time, since this is completed up underneath the hood, we can put the battery cover on and shut the hood. All right, so we got our subwoofers in, we got everything all reassembled here, just everything in reverse order. Let's show you the amplifier side. Here we are over here, got the amp all in. RCAs, power and ground, we got our speaker wire output to our subs here. Everything is all zip tied and it'll fold with the seat. Nothing will get pinched or ripped out of the amp. Just got our gains and our crossovers all set. That's good to go to the factory radio. And at this point, we are done. Now I do have the radio on, and it certainly is booting up the amplifier. This thing bumps pretty good, especially for how small the car is. Having two 12s really does make a big difference. That's about it for this video. Now, if you have any questions on what we did here, go ahead and post a comment below. We'll link all our recommended parts down in the description of the video in case you want to pick some up for yourself. Thanks again for watching. Be sure to hit the like button if you like what you saw. And don't forget to subscribe. We post great content on the channel all the time. And we'll see you in the next video.